Hello and welcome back to something I have not done in a long time. This is an HO scale review. I haven't done those in a while. I've mostly focused on N scale. And this is a review of the Rapido Trains mid-train dome car. This was a pretty big release, in my opinion, from Rapido because there were a lot of paint schemes that came out, and these are really nice models. These cars were released in Amtrak Phase 1, Baltimore and Ohio, Canadian National, an older silver scheme, Canadian National, the black and green scheme, Canadian Pacific, CP Action Red, Delaware and Hudson, Illinois Central, Missouri Pacific Eagle, Norfolk and Western, which is based off the Wabash scheme you see here, Seaboard Coastline, Via Rail, and Wabash, which again, I've got the Wabash and the Illinois Central here, so you'll see a couple of differences between the two models, but there's not a whole lot of difference besides obviously the paint, but some of the interior colors are different, and Rapido went to lengths to try and fit in all of the specific details, and you'll notice some differences between these two models, like the placement of the blinds on the sides of the windows and a couple other little things. Now these models have been out for a little while now, so it may be hard to find them. I generally see them about around the $110 mark, $109 or so, but there's not a whole lot around anymore because Rapido tends to do things in fairly limited numbers, and everyone who wanted one in the beginning got theirs, and the rest of them have sort of been shuffled through. I managed to get this Wabash one a little bit later after they had already been shipped because Rapido still had a couple of Wabash cars left. But in any case, I wanted to take you through these models and show you some of the details and give you a little bit of information about them, so that way hopefully if you come across some that you see that fit in with what you're looking for, you may consider them, or you may consider some of the future offerings from Rapido, because I'm really excited about the Pullman dining cars that they have coming soon. They just shipped their New Haven dining cars, and we've got some of those here at the store, and they look really great, but they don't really fit in with what I'm looking for, so hopefully this will give you an idea of what Rapido is capable of doing in the passenger cars, and maybe you'll have some interest in getting some. So let's get started. The first thing I gotta say is these cars are basically the pinnacle of what you can do in plastic. In fact, I kind of think they're in some ways better than what you can get in brass as far as what you spend your money on. I mean, you can get amazing brass models for hundreds and hundreds, thousands of dollars even sometimes, and these are basically pushing plastic as far as they can go, and I'm sure the folks at Rapido would say, well, there's probably even more we could do, but we have to keep increasing the price because the more details you add, you have to add more costs into making the individual pieces and then paying people to assemble them. But these guys are incredible. These cars do come with interior lights, and they do have capacitors, so that means when you put it on the track it builds up power, so when you hit a dead spot on track, or even if you lift the cars off the track, the lights will stay on for a couple seconds. I've seen this done in a variety of cars, and it works pretty well in these cars. Also, these cars roll really, really smoothly. They have very little friction. That's why I set the box behind these cars to keep them from rolling off the edge of the table, because I don't really have a better place to put them that lets me move around them easily and have the light on them. So these cars roll incredibly smoothly. You can tell if your table is not perfectly level, because they will roll to the other end of the layout if you have any very slight variation in elevation on your layout. So that's really good. That means they roll really smoothly, and you can pull a lot of these cars behind just one engine. We'll start on this end. The vestibules are sprung on these guys, and the couplers are tucked in there pretty well. So when you have them lined up on the track, the coaches are actually pretty close together. I don't know that they're as close as they could be if you were using ultra close couplings, but they look really good, and you do have the vestibules right up against each other. And you also have a lot of separately applied details that you can really see in there, like the little gate between the cars and the handrails that are up on top, just next to the doors there. That's one of the things that Rapido really gives you a lot of, is the separately applied details. That's what you're paying for, really, is for someone to go and detail these to the maximum. Side on, you can see that the blinds are different between the two cars. Obviously, you can see the colors. The sort of dark green that you see on the Illinois Central car versus the white blinds that you see on the Wabash car. You can also see that they're at different heights to add some variety. I know a lot of people who get into high-end modeling really like it when each car has individuality, and that's one of the things that Rapido really does well with getting these cars done, is adding some individuality between the cars, so you have some variation, so it's not super obvious when you have two of the identical cars that you may renumber or something like that. They really go, above and beyond with that. Secondly, you can almost tell that the cars have different designs of blinds. So not just the different colors, but the style of the blinds that are on there are different. So you can kind of tell it on the wider windows. With the Wabash car up front, you can see that the blinds are sort of halfway across, and so they're at different heights, whereas you can see the blinds that are on the Illinois Central car go fully across. They're actually solid, whereas the blinds that are on the Wabash cars are slatted, sort of like what you may see on your home. Your blinds at home will be slatted, whereas the ones that are on the Illinois Central car are solid. And just another difference to show you that Rapido was paying attention when painting up these cars, the difference of the interior colors. You can see the Wabash has a sort of medium blue interior, whereas the Illinois Central car has a beige interior. And again, I believe they've tried to go through and make sure that the colors of the interiors sort of match up with the prototypes. I'm sure there's probably some variations that existed in real life, but they seem to have done a pretty good job. However, one of the little downsides that you can see with the separately applied grab irons that are all over these cars, and I spun the Illinois Central one around so you can see the other side, is that they aren't painted. They are shiny metal, and some people won't like that, but it's a very little thing. And on the Wabash car, it's a lot less noticeable, but on the Illinois Central car, it's a little more noticeable because it's obviously not that shiny stainless steel that the Wabash and a lot of the other cars are. So it may have been a production thing that, since many of the cars are the bare stainless steel, nice and shiny, that they thought, well, the grab irons will not look that out of place on those guys, but on the Illinois Central car they do look a little bit too shiny compared to the actual paint of the car. And of course, that's a pretty simple fix. If it bothers you, just grab some paint and get those to be painted the matching colors. One of the other things that Rapido really prides themselves in is their underside detail, and it's hard to see it from the top, obviously, especially if you're standing at your layout looking down at them. It can be a little hard to see them, so I'm going to try and show you from the sides how all this detail looks, and then we'll look underneath and see what all is actually there, because most of the time you're not going to be turning your cars upside down, so having details that you can see from above and from the side really makes a difference and makes it worth having all those underside details. So we'll take a look around on these cars, and then I'll show you the undersides here in a little bit. This isn't the most exciting side of the car. There's not a whole lot going on, but there are these electrical boxes, I believe. That's what these are on the underside, and you can see some of the other details there. And you might be able to tell those little holes that are in those boxes have wire mesh behind the holes. So that's a nice little detail that, again, you might not be able to see all the time, but it's something you can really appreciate, that they obviously cared a lot when they were making these models. And further down, like I said, there isn't a whole lot going on this side. The more interesting side is on the other, where you have the air conditioning and all that stuff. So we'll just take a look here. You can see some of the other details here, and now we'll flip around to the other side. And you can see there's a little bit more going on this side. You've got the fans down there for what I believe is air conditioning, and some other little details down there. And then back underneath the dome, it's about the same as what you saw on the other side. And here is the underside of a Rapido dome car. Now, some people will say, why do I care if the underside of my car is that detailed? Well, maybe a Rapido model is not for you. But looking at this car, you see the amount of craftsmanship that goes into making these guys, from the design on the computer to creating all actual details to the actual assembly, you can see that they just go wild with the underside detail, and that really matters a lot to them, and hopefully that matters a lot to you, because that's what makes these models so complete, that they actually bothered to model all the underside stuff, and it shows that they really care about making a quality product. So you can really see, we're just on one end here. You can see a lot of the details underneath the trucks here. I'll move that out of the way so hopefully you can kind of get an idea of what's going on down there and some of the details on the trucks. And you can also see towards the middle there is the Rapido logo and all that good stuff. And of course you cannot see that at all when you have it turned onto the track. And as we move towards the other end of the car, you really see where the detailing goes crazy. All of the individual piping and all that stuff is, like I said, individual. They've had to obviously pay someone to go through and assemble all this stuff, and that's obviously where the costs add up, and that's why some of the Rapido models are much more expensive than some of the other cars. But compared to like the MTH passenger cars and the Broadway limited passenger cars, the extra $5 to $10 for some of these, comparing to the California Zephyr cars from Broadway limited, really, I think the benefit with going with the Rapido is pretty evident. That I think some of the details are a lot more defined. As far as the lighting goes, I think the Rapidos have much better lighting than MTH for sure. I think they're fairly comparable to the Broadway Limited, but I prefer the Rapido just overall. You're really paying for a quality product, so we'll just go through and look at some of these other angles and get some more of these details. Again, you can see the actual fans there on the side that we saw earlier from above, and more of the excellent piping and the boxes that are on the other side as well. And going back to the other end, here's a detail that I didn't notice when we were looking up above, even though it would have been visible. You can see the little chain there next to the coupler right there. This guy here, that's actually a separately applied chain there. And I'll just get you another angle here while I say this. I don't want to sound like I am shilling for Rapido. Obviously, I really like their products. I've spent more than enough money on their products, and I'm very satisfied with it. But I do want to say I have met the folks at Rapido. I was able to go to one of their dealer meetings they had in summer of 2019. So I wanted to say that because I do have a little bit of a connection with Rapido. I got to meet them. I am a Rapido dealer here with A-Trains. So I do have that. But I wanted to be pretty sincere about these guys, that I do think that the Rapido models are incredible. They're top of the line as far as plastic models go. And I want to make that clear that I'm not just saying that because I like being a Rapido dealer. I'm saying that because I really like their products, and I want to see more people find out about Rapido, because not a whole lot of people have seen them. As far as I can tell, I get people who have never heard of Rapido before, and well, that's a shame because they make such good products that it's silly to not share the amazing stuff that is out here in the model railroad world, and it's constantly growing. There's always more coming, and it's an exciting time to be in the hobby. So back to the review. I'm doing my best to get close-ups on these guys so you can kind of get an idea of how well done the painting on these guys is. I mean, the painting is, from what I can tell, very perfect. I don't have any problems. I don't see any issues where the paint is sort of going over the edges, where it's been overpainted or anything like that. Very solid on these guys. You know, it's easy to make mistakes, I know that, but the two examples I have here have excellent painting. And here you can see the separately applied number plates that are on these cars. The Wabash has it on all four corners. The Illinois Central one only has it on one end, and you can see that here. And really the big draw from all of this is how well done the decals are and the painting is. I mean, you can see that the yellow stripes on this guy are really nice and sharp. You can hopefully catch that the numbers printed on there are really nice and sharp, and that there's a tiny little silver border around this number board with sort of highlights on the rivets or screws, whichever would have actually been on this. But I think the decal work and the painting work on all these guys are really nicely done. Unfortunately, I don't have my macro lens to get even closer that I've used in the past. But you get the idea of how sharp this is, and especially once you start getting more than a foot away, everything looks pretty much perfect. I don't see anything obviously wrong with these guys. So here's a comparison between the doors on either end. So the dome on the Illinois Central car is far from the camera, whereas the dome on the Wabash car is nearer. So you can see what the two different ends look like compared to each other. And you can see that obviously the Illinois Central one that we have here, that door is much more recessed, and you know, you can see that there's a little bit of painting and detail work inside there. Whereas the Wabash one, you can see that it, you know, the door's right up against the gate, and it looks like there's some chain detail there too. And here's one of the other differences between these two cars in particular. You can see that the Illinois Central cars, the windows on the ends are blanked out, whereas the dome windows on the sides are still clear, whereas that's obviously not the case on the Wabash one, where they're still clear on the ends as well. And I don't know which other road names, if any, had the windows blanked out, but that's a nice detail that they went ahead and blanked out the windows on the dome car on the ends for the Illinois Central. Now, one little thing that may annoy some modelers is that the bare LEDs for the dome part of the car can be seen from above pretty easily, in fact. And some people may not like that, but if it really bothers you, you can probably come up with some solution to mount them to the top of the dome. But for me, it's not that big of a deal, especially if you start getting figures in there. It distracts from the lighting up there. The lighting on the lower level, however, is really, really nice, and I'll try and get up close and so you can see in both of these cars with the difference between the blinds and the seating colors, just how good the interior on these guys looks. And from what I understand, Rapido tends to even outdo themselves with these guys on the dining cars that they have coming up. I think the dining cars are supposed to have plates and all that stuff on the inside. There are no figures on the inside of these cars. Some people complain about that, but that gives you the option to add your own rather than getting a car that has figures in it that you might not want. Particularly if you have these sitting in some sort of museum or something like that that may not always have passengers inside. So we'll take a look at the inside on the lower level now on both of these cars. Here you can see the interior seats on the Illinois Central car, and we'll take a couple little trips around to the different windows. I apologize if you can hear traffic in the background. I've tried to get this at a good time, but unfortunately some people with Mustangs or modded Honda Civics have decided that right now was the best time to drive past. Trying to catch all of this on camera is a little difficult because of the narrow field of view and the narrow focusing distance. So you might just be able to see the staircase there leading up to the top of the dome. I mean, all that kind of stuff is detailed inside there, and you can see some of the wraparound couches with the tables there. Hopefully you'll be able to get an idea of some of the details on these guys. Now we're looking into the Wabash car, and you can see the color of the interior is different, and it's a little bit lighter in there, so hopefully you can kind of see some of the seats of the tables in there on the one end, and then of course on the other end are just normal chairs. Also, I just want to do a little demonstration on how the lights on these cars work. The power is fully on the track right now, and the Wabash car has its lights on, but the Illinois Central one doesn't. Now, in the package with these guys, you'll get this little guy, and they call this, I think they call this a magic wand, but there's a little magnet in the top of the cars that activates the lights. I can't remember if it's here or if it's here. That there it is. It's right here. So you can see as I move my magic wand over there, it'll activate the lights or disable them, whether you want them on or off. And you can kind of see the difference when I turn them off here. You know how much of a difference having the lights in these guys makes. I've seen some of the cars from MTH, that the lights are pretty dim, and the lights are bright enough in these cars to really make a difference and really make the inside visible, especially in the Wabash car with the beige seats on the lower level that kind of bring out some of the sort of reflect some of the light, whereas the blue seats that are on the lower level of the Illinois Central car tend to absorb a little bit more light and so make it a little bit darker. But I like the lighting in these cars. It's not too bright to be overwhelming, but it's also bright enough that you can see the interior details and tell that the lights are on. And especially once you get figures inside there, the lights will really bring that out. And when these are rolling on your layout, you'll really be able to see what's going on inside and appreciate all the details going on. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any sort of passenger engines of my own to run on this layout. This is just our window layout, basically the workbench, so please excuse all of the mess of parts and half disassembled engines and cars and all that stuff. This is mostly where we are doing our working right now on repairing stuff. This will be a finished layout down the road, but we just haven't got that far yet. So, and yes, I'm aware that this Atlas U23B does not have any handrails on it. We have not added those because this is just running on our window layout. There are no guards against the edges of the layout to keep children from grabbing things. So this guy has no handrails at the moment because there's no plexiglass or anything like that on the sides of this display layout. So that just keeps things from getting broken. And once we get plexiglass around the edges, then we'll go ahead and put all those details on there. But that's what I'm running this with today because it's a pretty quiet engine, and all the engines that I have are DCC sound. And unfortunately, this layout is only DC at the moment. We do have a controller that will hook up here down the road, but we don't have one right now. So this layout is DC, so you'll get to see some of the DC operation of these guys. How bright the lights are, you already saw when I turned the power on. I turned it up about halfway, and you saw that the lights were pretty bright. So, well, I'll run it around the track a couple times. I chose this guy because it's pretty quiet, and so hopefully that will give you an idea of how loud these cars are. They're not very. Most cars aren't, but they're not squeaky. They're pretty smooth rolling. So we'll run this around the layout a couple times, and I'll show you some of the close-ups and hopefully get an idea of what these guys might look like on your layout. And that squeaking is coming from the engine. As you can see, the lights aren't on here yet, but I do have the power turned down pretty low. Now this is about 1/5 throttle, and so this is about as low as you'll get with the lights on. You might be able to get a little bit lower, but that's about lights at just below full brightness, again on a DC layout, and that's running pretty slowly. So I'll try and get a couple more passes by and try and get you some more different angles so you can see what these guys look like. Now you might say that the colors of the Illinois Central car look a little bit more blue, or the color of the lights I mean, and that's obviously just because of the difference of the interior color. As you see, the interior of the Wabash car looks a little more of a warm color, whereas the interior of the Illinois Central car looks a little more blue. That's obviously because the interior of the Illinois Central car is blue, and the interior of the Wabash car is beige. So that's obviously the difference. I believe the colors of the LEDs are exactly the same, sort of a warmish color. That's just the difference of the interior giving off a different color. So hopefully maybe that offers a little bit of variety, but some people might decide that that's not nice enough for them. But when you see the shine of the lights, it's obvious that they're the same color. So, and just one more thing. I'm going to show you about how long the Keepalive lasts on these guys. I don't know whether it's Keepalive brand or whatever, but whatever capacitor that they use in these guys, I'm going to show you. So I've given it a couple seconds here to charge up, and I'll shut the power off now. So you have about maybe 3 seconds worth of power that will keep these guys lit as you traverse bad track or whatever. And for most people that's not going to be a problem. Unless you have really, really bad track, then you probably aren't going to be pulling anything because your engines are going to be having problems too. So yeah, the Keepalive system that they use in these guys works pretty well. And you can also, I'll switch to a close-up so you can see the distance between the vestibules. There's a little bit of space there. This is going onto a curve because we don't really have a very long straightaway on this layout. So that's a very tiny bit of curve that these guys are going on to, but that gives you an idea of the amount of spacing between these cars. And I'm sure if you really wanted to, there's a way you could get them pulled in even closer. But these guys are able to negotiate pretty decent radius curves. I believe we've got 28 on this layout here, so I mean these guys will go around that just fine. So hope you enjoy this look at the Rapido mid-train dome cars. These are really nice models and I love them a lot. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Maybe you'll pick up a couple if you come across them, or you'll look out for some of Rapido's future offerings. Either way, thank you very much for watching.